Have you ever considered that the thing that saved you or your coping mechanism may be the one thing that's actually holding you back? Because if this thing made you feel better, made it easier for you to cope, or easier to just deal and survive the hard times of your life, it's going to be something that you're going to look at as potentially saving you, as potentially making your life worthwhile, as potentially a child who, not saying that you're a child, but when you're a child, you deal with or you have things that are near and dear to you that you do not want to let go. Whether that's a blanket, whether that's a stuffed animal, whether that's a photo, any number of things. And sometimes the harder that we cling on to things, the harder it is to let go because they feel like they're meant for us. They feel like they're helping us. Sometimes they can be, sometimes they can't be. Sometimes they can even go far enough that they become a security blanket when you potentially don't need a security blanket for what you're facing because you're strong, you're capable, you're able to do what needs to be done. And this isn't me judging you. I think we all have our own coping mechanisms. We all have our own vices. And that is a perfectly natural thing that people seem to have. But the problem becomes if in any way it is holding you back, if it is preventing you from being able to see what is ahead of you and continuing to rely on this outdated source of coping, then it can be an issue. But only you know. For instance, we've talked about coping mechanisms can be as simple as overworking, can be as simple as shopping, can be as simple as eating, can be as simple as exercising. The issue isn't the thing necessarily. It's the fixation of the thing. It's the almost savior complex of this thing coming into your life. It's also the dire consequences that can occur. For instance, over exercising can cause you to harm yourself in certain ways, meaning overexerting yourself. Overeating obviously is self-explanatory. Over shopping can kill your financial future potentially. Additionally, we talk about alcohol, we talk about illegal substances, things like that. I mean, those are also self-explanatory. Perfectionism may not be seen as a coping mechanism, but it most definitely is. And it promises safety, but it doesn't deliver what it promises. And so ultimately, these coping mechanisms can be hard to break. But it can be done slowly. It can be done with compassion. Potentially, if you're having a lot of issues letting go of certain things, then definitely seek out support if you need it. There's no shame in asking for that. And ultimately, being aware isn't judgment. It's the beginning of change. And so if you find yourself holding tightly onto something and you're realizing that it's not really serving what you thought that it would serve for you, then it may be time to let it go. And that doesn't mean replacing one vice with another, right? It doesn't mean going from, I use shopping as my coping mechanism, and now I'm going to change from shopping to drinking, But ultimately being aware, it helps you know yourself better. Maybe you can potentially start figuring out what other things that you can use to replace something, especially if it's having a negative effect on you. I think that that's extremely important. Additionally, coping mechanisms aren't abstract. We all have them, right? So this is also for a woman who can't sit still because maybe she has racing thoughts. Maybe she's an overthinker, an over-apologizer, overdoer, all of those things. That could be a coping mechanism for her to keep her mind busy. Or the man who jokes about everything. This person likely may have an issue with dealing with pain and hurt and sadness and things like that. So they joke about everything to make things lighter so that they don't feel heavy. The parent who never asks for help because they have learned hyper independence, maybe through trauma, maybe through experiences in their life where people didn't show up for them. So that can also be a coping mechanism. The achiever who feels guilty resting, again, that is clearly pointing at perfectionism. And as I've said, again, my username is Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress, because I've learned that perfectionism is a trap, and none of us are going to be perfect ever, right? And nor should we try to be. And so ultimately, you might find yourself fitting into some of these categories, and it makes sense. Oh, wait a minute, this has been with me, and this is what triggered it. And I think that it would be definitely interesting and beneficial to you to take some time to sit down with your thoughts, even if they're uncomfortable, because oftentimes uncomfortable thoughts can illuminate things a lot more easily than okie dokie thoughts and happy and calm thoughts where you're not digging deeper to try to figure out what was actually the source of that. And so I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. My name is Buffy. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney. And if you got value from this, please consider liking and subscribing. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.